Welcome to the Theology of Business podcast, where marketplace Christians explore God's will and ways for business. This show features conversations with today's Christ-centered business leaders who are representing Christ faithfully in the business world. I'm your host, Darren Shear, and if you want to make your work, leadership, and company's culture more Christ-centered, you've come to the right place. On this episode, we're joined by Andrew Cooper. Andy is a globally recognized executive leader and advocate for compassionate business practices. He's currently the head of patent acquisitions at Meta Platforms, formerly known as Facebook, and he made history as the first millennial and Black executive to serve as general counsel of UPS Airlines, which gets a lot of my business, as I'm sure they get a lot of everyone's business, which is the world's largest logistics airline, operating in 220 countries with over 20,000 employees. Andy's team played a pivotal role in the success of Operation Warp Speed, the U.S. pandemic vaccine relief effort. Committed to facilitating leadership transformation, he assists organizations in achieving and sustaining high performance. And he's the author of the new book, which is a fantastic book, The Ethical Imperative, Leading with Conscience to Shape the Future of Business. Andy, welcome to the Theology of Business podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah. Should also mention we are two preacher's kids from the state of South Carolina. So just reminiscing.
The great state.
Yeah, the great state of South Kakalaki.
That's right.
Yes, indeed. Andy, when did you first realize God wanted to be involved in your work and business?
You know, he has always been present in my life and business. I mean, since I was baptized in the Pacific Ocean when I was 9 years old, I knew that everything that I touched would be guided by God's hand. So it was never really was a pivotal moment that I said, "Oh, I've got to now include God in what I do." He's just been there, guiding every step of the way.
Wow. So even growing up as a pastor's kid, there was never any sense that, you know what, if you want to really do something great for God, you need to be standing behind a pulpit or anything like that. You never had that sort of an idea.
You know, I never got the call, and I'll tell you, family members have always pushed me in that direction. As you know, coming from a small town in South Carolina, there's a tendency to say, "Oh, well, the pastor's son, you know, he's in church, and you know, he's anointed, and he should be in the pulpit." But I don't take that kind of thing lightly, and I believe there are people that are called for that type of stewardship. And then there are others called for other types of evangelism. And I think mine has been largely in the courtroom and in corporate offices. That's kind of where I've really been focusing just in the last 13 years, trying to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ in these really large and complex places where we're not always welcome.
Yeah. Wow. So General counsel of UPS, now head of patent acquisitions for Meta. I mean, two of the largest companies in the world. What's a story of a time when you saw God's hand at work in any of the positions that you've been in?
So, you know, when I was elevated to the GC role at UPS Airlines, it was 2018, and an opportunity was presented by someone who retired, and they said, "Hey, I think you should step into this," even though I was fairly young at the time, in my early 30s. And typically they would put someone much older in that role. But I moved my pregnant wife and family out to Louisville, Kentucky, a place we had never been, and began working as part of the leadership team of this really large organization, 20,000 employees, billions of dollars. And it never occurred to me that a generation-defining event like a pandemic would take place. And for up until that point, my entire career, I had been trying to avoid weighty issues like death. My wife was a prosecutor, so she's put people in prison for murders. She's been a divorce lawyer, which is, you know, like the death of a marriage. She's dealt with like very difficult topics and issues. And I kind of went the other direction. I said, I'm going to focus on contracts. I'm going to focus on high tech. I'm going to do things that don't involve those things. But then I got a call in late 2018 beginning of 2019, maybe January timeframe. And it was from someone in New York. And they said, hey, I need I need some help with storage. And I'm like, well, this is common. We do that. We can help you with that. But why are you calling me in the legal department? They're like, no. You don't understand. I need storage for dead bodies. I need cold storage because we are literally overwhelmed in this morgue right now with bodies piling up. And in one conversation, the considerations that I was really focused on shifted from contracts and products to people. And it's been focused on people ever since. That was the beginning of the pandemic and the beginning of dealing with the death of individuals that I've known closely, people on my team who were going through depression. And it really made me focus on the ministry of leadership that we experience. Anyone who has to lead people who's in an organization, it really is a type of calling that the right people in the right places get great results, but it can also go in the opposite direction. And I have seen that happen where you've got the wrong people that don't really care about individuals. And that can also have deleterious effects.
Yes. What's one of the best business practices that helps you reflect the character and ways of God and, maybe the position you're in Meta or when you were at UPS or, something that you do that you see as important that you really have infused in the culture of your organization?
Now, it's so let me answer that question first by saying what I do as an individual and then what I try to do for my team. I grew up Baptist. I happen to go to a Methodist church now. And the Methodists, they love they love Psalms 119, and it's thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. And it's very similar to one of the scriptures that I love the most, and it's John 12, and it's if I be lifted up from the earth, I will draw all men unto me. And the two scriptures to me really guide how I practice law, how I practice my leadership, and that is to first emulate the example of Christ, because I believe if I lift up Christ's example in the way I behave, in the way I interact with people, in the way that I talk, in the way that I deport myself, that is a form of evangelism, and that other people will see it and will follow it. So I can first conduct myself in a way that is that demonstrates caring and concern for others. It's in how you speak to others. I started off my corporate experience in a large blue collar organization. And in warehouse environments, it was customary to go into the warehouse. I talk about this a little bit in my book, where leaders would be go and work shoulder to shoulder with folks on the front line, union workers. And it was not uncommon to sometimes, hear conversations and the way that people would speak to each other that didn't always reflect the best of humanity. But that's every organization. And so in the way that I conduct myself, that was key. But then when I shifted to managing people, it was important for me to also instill certain practices among my team. One of those practices that I think really encapsulates Christian care and concern is to never allow for critique or criticism to become a characterization of individuals. We in high tech, where I sit now, we love the phrase, feedback is a gift. In some ways, that unburdens people from being tactful in their feedback. Yeah. We kind of beat into people, you just say whatever you want to say, give them the feedback, even if it hurts. Well, the truth is, we're human beings and we have feelings. And for my organization, I try to instill that, hey, if you're a manager and you have concerns about an employee, don't bring them to me until you first take it to the person that you have concerns with. Don't bring it to me until you have first trained those individuals. It's almost like that scripture where if you have a concern with your brother, you go to them first. And if that doesn't work, then you bring 2 or 3 witnesses. Right. It's kind of that. And that's what
Yeah.
I've tried to
And even
create.
before that, take the log out of your
That's
own
it.
eye before
That's
you
it.
try to take. That's the one where we really kind of
That's it.
leapfrog.
That's it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that is a massive difference maker, especially people, as we talk about doing business biblically,
Mm,
people ask, how do we do this in a Fortune 500 company? It's not your family owned, Christian auto dealership where we can put Bibles in the glove box, for new customers and things like that. I mean, it's a
yeah.
very pluralistic, diverse work environment. And but just that practice of let me lead with encouragement and not with criticism.
That's right.
But we can even give a spiritual answer for why we insist on criticizing first. I speak
Yes.
the truth in love. Let me,
That's right.
because I
Yes.
love them. I got to give them the truth. I can't just sugarcoat it
That's right.
for them. But this is so much easier said than done, isn't it?
It is. I mean, we have to be as wise as serpents and as harmless as doves. And that means, I have never pulled a punch in a corporate environment for the sake of appearing Christian. If I've had to throw a punch, it's for the sake of doing what was right. And it is okay for us to, take up a battle. You're going to, as a Christian inside large corporate environments, you are going to deal with conflict. You are going to deal with uncomfortable conversations. You're going to deal with things that make you feel uncomfortable. And it's, it just is what it is. You personally may feel uncomfortable. I know when I entered into the West Coast, the Silicon Valley environment, there were aspects of the corporate culture that I had to become accustomed with. But that didn't mean that I had to put down what I personally believe as an individual and as a Christian. Things like treating other people with respect, regardless of how they portray themselves or would bring, themselves to the office. You can look at the humanity of individuals. You can support the humanity of individuals without compromising yourself or your principles. And it is a fine line to walk, but it's a walk that we are expected to walk as Christians, because we're supposed to be in this world, not of it, but we're supposed to be in it.
Yes. The legendary coach of the Dallas Cowboys, Tom Landry, one of the things that he started doing, kind of later in his career, when, he wasn't getting the results that he really wanted, he said, you know what, when we show film after the game, we're going to show your best plays. We're not going to focus on, and this is very countercultural, as you know, we're not going to show the areas where you screwed up. But and the rationale was, I mean, there's millions of ways to do it wrong, but there's far fewer ways to do it right. And so we want to focus on the right way of doing things and affirm that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And, they win multiple Super Bowls with him as the head coach. So it's I mean, is this the culture in Silicon Valley? Because I guess when I think about Silicon Valley, Steve Jobs comes to mind, and I don't, it just sort of the word on the street is, he would kind of berate people. Is that kind of the culture of Silicon Valley, to kind of get what you want?
Well, I think I think there's a work hard, play hard culture for sure. There's a culture of being candid with individuals, absolutely. And then I wouldn't speak on Apple. I've never been in the Apple environment, and I certainly think each company has its own unique culture. We certainly do a great job, I think, at Meta of looking to create space, safety for anyone to be who they want to be within our organization. And look, we fall short, even as Christians, we've all fallen short. What's really important is when you find yourself in an environment that may be different from your origin, to really be introspective, to think about, okay, where are the threads of commonality that I can find with my brothers and sisters who may not share my beliefs? How do I find those universal threads and accentuate them with who I am authentically as a Christian? And we certainly at Meta, we encourage that. There's actually a Christians at Meta group. We meet monthly to pray, to encourage each other. It certainly was a resource for me when we went through periods of turmoil. In the last year and a half, we've had layoffs, which was really hard. So managing through that and having a support system was really helpful. So it just depends. It really depends. But what doesn't change is who we show up as managers and as workers.
Yeah. Well, that's so powerful. I've been hearing about some of these employee resource groups at places like Apple and Meta for Christians to gather, because this is not a individual sport.
Right.
Like this is a team mission that we have as believers, and it's not living the Christian life is to be done in community. And
yes.
Where do you spend most of your waking hours is at work. And so if disciples are going to be made, they're going to be made at work, or they're not really going to be made at all.
That's right.
And so that's so encouraging to hear that there's a vibrant group of believers gathering there at Meta.
That's right.
So,
and I'll tell you,
yeah.
there's a chapter in the book where I talk about the Treisman model. And Uri Treisman was a professor out in California who realized that there were some challenges between different groups of students that he had in his class from a performance perspective. And so he began to inquire of the students, let me follow you, let me see how you're studying, let me see what your practices are. And what came out of that search, that observation, is that there were groups of students that were willing to get together, to study together, to share together. They did more than that. They ate together. They, went to social events together, but they did things in community. And then there were other groups of students that felt as if they were disconnected or not really part of community. And sometimes that can be how corporate America feels for Christian executives, Christian workers. And we need to find each other. We need to leverage the tools that we have through the BRGs that these organizations have created through their diversity organizations, and leverage those to create those connections for what I call subjacent lateral support. That sometimes it's below the surface, but it's really important to ensure that you don't fall over. I'm reaching out to my brother and sister. Other people may not see it or know it, but hey, I can send you an email, every now and then just to check in on you. We can get together for lunch. We can talk about the challenges that we're having managing people, folks who, or even, being managed. Those types of things are how we develop the political capital in order to get to a strategic level in organizations, which allows us then to be in the room when it comes to making decisions that impact broader society. Because let me tell you, having Christians inside the organization that's making decisions about social media is a huge advantage, and it hugely impacts things that we see on our various screens, on our TVs, and on our phones.
Yeah. Like in what ways?
So, when it comes to decisions about content moderation, what is permissible to see on a platform and what is not permissible? And I'm not, speaking specifically about Facebook, but any social media company, TikTok, YouTube is a huge social platform. All of these organizations have reviews for content moderation. And being in the room allows us to put our perspective, because oftentimes, things that are of a particular religious view are flagged across platforms by various groups that may find those views offensive. And so when it comes to freedom of speech, when it comes to having a full conversation about what is permissible on a platform, I'd rather Christians in the room than not be in the room.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. Yeah, we hear the stories of Christian groups trying to run ads and not. I just talked to one a couple of days ago trying to get ads for their conference and just not getting that platform. And so worldview is a massive determinant in whether or not this organization is going to get their message out.
Yes. And I will say, I think one of the biggest failures that we could have as Christians, or mistakes we could make as Christians, is not leaning into not getting into the fight when it comes to what should and should not be part of the conversation, the public discourse through social media and even in traditional media. The West Coast, Hollywood, social media companies in California, these are narrative defining organizations. And so it's really important that when we're having a seat at the table, that we are putting our agenda forward so that it is part of what ultimately becomes the culture, because culture really is what is driving revenues. It's what's driving political decisions. Culture really shapes everything that we do. And how can we say that we are actually evangelizing when we are not being part of the conversation about what culture should be? And that's how I wouldn't say how I justify, but that's how I see my ministry right now. Even though it's not in the pulpit, it's being someone that's on the inside of various organizations and trying to keep them as broad and open as possible to the points of view that we all share. And that's the gospel of Jesus Christ.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, culture is what companies are really marketing when it comes down to it. I mean, the products and the services and the hiring preferences and the causes that they support with their profits. I mean, it's to perpetuate a certain culture.
That's right.
And what culture is that going to be?
And let me give you this thesis. So this is the thesis that underpins the book. And that's any process, any thought, experience, or emotion that can manifest at an individual level. It may manifest at an organizational level, given the right conditions. So that means an organization, a corporation, can perpetuate acts that are hateful and loving, experience stages of life like growth and death. It can demonstrate vindictiveness as well as generosity. It can be innovative and stagnant, sick and healthy, uncaring, and conscientious. And so all of these expressions, they result from the composite personality that emerges as a distinct corporate reputation. And a lot of it is driven by the individuals within the organization. That's the thesis. And so if that is true, then we can change how organizations behave if we have the right people, the right composition. And so for those who are managers, I talk about the importance of hiring decisions and the importance of conscientiousness as a key trait with which to hire and retain individuals, because that ultimately plays out in so many different facets of the organizational life.
Yeah. So the book, The Ethical Imperative, Leading with Conscience to Shape the Future of Business. Why now?
Why now? There's a sociological fire that's raging across the country in the United States, and I would argue even the world. And the first part of the book talks about this. It's broken up into three parts. The first is what I call the conflagration. And for those people who have read The Fourth Turning, what I've done is I have taken data from contemporary data and explained how the events we have seen, the recessions, the layoffs, the challenges in the political sphere where it seems like we're always at each other's throats, how all of these things are a result of a lack of leadership. People abdicating the responsibility of leading others with conscientiousness. And really the reason it's called the ethical imperative is because there's really only one. There's only one imperative, and that is to improve the lives of people. People must be the center. Humanity must be the center of our efforts as corporate executives, as small business owners. I run a small micro market and vending machine business as well, one employee. And so improving her life is important to me as a manager. And so that is the ethical imperative. There are 4 non-negotiables that, after looking over 100 years of research, successful companies and unsuccessful companies, these 4 big things kind of pop out as being the antidote to the conflagration that we are experiencing. And just by way of kind of example of some of the things that we're experiencing, depression at an all-time high in our organizations, male loneliness at an all-time high, marriage at an all-time low, child rearing at an all-time low. When you go through each one of the metrics and indices, you realize that we are not in a good place as a society, and certainly not as business. So I leverage the Edelman Trust Barometer, which for decades has looked at the faith that individuals place in leaders, in managers, and in organizations. And then it does that in a few different industries. So it does it in government, and then does it in private corporate environments. And those numbers are trust has gone from highs in the 90s down to, a nadir. And so that's why the time is now for emerging leaders to step up. Too long, I think we have taken a back seat. We've said, hey, it's like a race. As you and I were talking earlier, I used to run track, and we would, you get on the starting line and you're waiting around for someone to say go. Well, the book is the go. For me, COVID was the starting gunshot for us to, as emerging leaders, really step up and to take a more active role in changing all of these negative metrics that I've just described.
Yeah. Well, the book is incredibly well researched, and just fantastic case examples that you share. Thank you for writing it.
Absolutely.
So your website is andrew-cooper.com.
That's right.
People can check you out there and certainly get this book. It is now available as of August the 14th? 13th.
That's right.
So it's out right now. Everybody go grab it. And Andy, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your time with us today. Very valuable time. We are certainly better for it.
Thank you, Darren. I really appreciate it. God bless you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Theology of Business podcast. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and tune in for the next episode as we continue exploring God's will and ways for business.